it looks like we have a great turnout this morning. Really, we're just kind of wrapping up some final things for the plan. One is to kind of review all the recommendations and strategies and make sure we're not missing something that is important to meeting our goals over the next 5 years and through 2045. And then also just going over kind of how we've assembled all of our work into the draft plan. So I'll just stop sharing the agenda and switch over to the actual planning document. So our policy and plan recommendations are organized around the goals that we selected earlier in the planning process, and kind of summarized safe for all users on all modes, asset management and fiscal responsibility, connected integrated multimodal system, resilient and prepared for the future, and then quality projects implementing best practices. And so we've got a number of kind of sub strategies and actions beneath each goal. And I don't know if anyone wants to talk about anything in particular. Otherwise, I can just run through them. Does anyone have a
pedestrian corridor that connected even a downtown, uptown, midtown, Drury, OTC? I mean, it basically connects all of that. And I think there's the metal, isn't it the metal facilities down there, Rusty, is that the only, I mean, I don't.
Okay, I'm not sure what that was necessarily. It almost sounded relevant for a second.
It was the SGS Fields meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was me. I was hopping between meetings.
Oh, you're all right. It was bound to happen at some point in all of these calls, right? So anyway, man, I really thought someone had something they wanted to talk about. Okay, back on track. So we start off with a safe transportation system for all users on all modes. And so part of that is implementing the actions outlined in the Traffic Incident Management Strategic Action Plan. Andy works with MoDOT on that committee for this area of the state, and they have regular meetings and they strategize how to improve safety through incident management and improve clear times and those kinds of things. And so they have actions tied directly to that plan that we want to continue implementing. The next one is to support MoDOT Show Me Zero, which is their strategic highway safety plan and the safety efforts within that. The Show Me Zero actually recommends certain strategies for MPOs to implement in support of Show Me Zero. And so we've incorporated those here. That includes prioritizing improvements that improve safety. And some of these are ones that we've also added in, but analyze bicycle and pedestrian crash locations to scope improvements, establish an interdisciplinary safety committee to lead organizational actions for incorporating safety into all transportation related functions. And we'll probably kind of look at how that maybe ties into the blueprint or the Missouri Coalition for Roadway Safety Committees. But then encouraging members to adopt a Vision Zero approach to addressing transportation safety, including complete streets or livable streets. Continue to participate in the Missouri Coalition for Roadway Safety. Educate member agencies on the significance of highway safety and how their agencies can contribute to a safer road system. And so you'll see a number of actions throughout this that do tie into education. That was something that came up repeatedly during our visioning process.
Hey, Natasha.
So, yeah.
Quick question on the establishing interdisciplinary safety committee. Is that one of the recommendations from Show Me Zero for MPOs?
It
do.
is. Mhm.
I was trying to understand how that's different from Blueprint or Traffic Advisory Board, and
Well, and I think that's
yeah.
something that we can, yeah, maybe kind of figure out where we can be most effective in working through. And so maybe establish isn't the right word, and maybe we don't need to include that one. It was directly out of Show Me Zero.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand where that was coming from.
Sarah,
Okay.
do you have any thoughts on that?
I think what Frank's getting at, and my thought was initially that that might be duplication of efforts, but I know that we like to say we included all the recommendations from Show Me Zero, so I was just
Yeah.
let it ride.
Yeah, it kind of
Maybe
led me to
we
think, okay, so what was Show Me Zero trying to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I got to think, well, even in St. Louis and Kansas City, you'd still have Blueprint groups working in those areas. So there's, and maybe the wording's a little vague to understand what they were getting at there.
Well, maybe we leave it and then we can just check mark it through our participation in those other groups.
Yeah, I think in some ways maybe they are training for something like Traffic Advisory Board too. But that's just Springfield, but that's going to get a lot of the bulk of arterial crashes. So, and then pedestrian and so forth. Okay, thanks.
Oh, yeah, and then also, through some of this other these other efforts to identify, some of our more safety concern areas, we can have some ad hoc meetings from time to time that include that as well. So those are things that we feel support Show Me Zero and our other safety efforts. So another one is to continue to improve accessibility for all modes and looking at developing standards for multimodal accessibility and identify improvements that would provide the greatest benefits towards accessibility. Consider vulnerable road users and underrepresented populations to ensure equity in transportation decision-making. So continue to refine our equity analysis tools available for project identification and prioritization. And that is something I know Dave is really been working to kind of identify some different analysis tools and strategies and ways to better identify and kind of review that impact. And then continue to monitor transit accessibility to essential public services. And then finally, to create a specific safety campaign, educate public on rules of the road for all users, and provide safety information on safe driving behaviors. It does seem like a lot of the crashes that we end up reviewing are oftentimes behaviorally related. So those are all the goals kind of tied into safety, and then a system that's for all users on all modes. So are there any additional comments or feedback on those? Okay, so then the next one is preserving existing transportation assets and promoting fiscal responsibility. And so initially setting the groundwork to successfully seek discretionary funding. We want to make sure that we're developing a good process for discretionary funding requests, using a website and other communication for centralized requests. And I think that was something that was really useful in the last round of earmarks that we did with Billy Long's office, especially just being able to put all of the information in one place on our website that his office could go to pull details. So continuing that model. Anticipate federal funding priorities and develop ready-made analysis materials. So there's a lot of information that's kind of coming out in this new round of raise grants and those sorts of things. So I think if OTO can have some information available that would make it easier for communities to pull into their applications, that would be great. Support funding requests for all modes of transportation that fit within the regional vision. Identify grant opportunities and use OTO staff to complete grant applications, and identify and make application to federal discretionary programs. So we do have a semi-new member of our staff that can help with this. Debbie Parks has returned as a grants administrator for OTO. Sarah, I don't know if you want to talk at all what you see her role being.
Sure. So one thing she's going to do is look for grant opportunities, especially outside like foundation grants, any of the federal grants as well. The first thing we've agreed to do is work on a raise grant for the City of Republic and some corridor type improvements and go from there. So I think that, we're going to start with one and then kind of advance over time on our capacity there.
Right, thanks. So then the next kind of overarching topic is seek opportunities for partnerships to fund, maintain, and enhance the transportation system. Promote the use of traffic impact studies that ensure developers are sharing in the cost of growth. And OTO does have those transportation impact study templates available for everyone, and we encourage your use of them. Encourage participation in the statewide cost share program, partner with local agencies to make shared investments, and use OTO staff to support streamlined project administration. And so that's something else that we are looking into, how we can maybe better facilitate, all of our communities who are stretched between, 20 different types of projects and everything, and we can maybe have one person dedicated to getting all of that information for projects, kind of turned into MoDOT and that sort of thing together. So let's see, support additional funding for every transportation mode. Continue to work with the Missouri Public Association to educate elected officials regarding the benefits of transit investment. Continue to partner with MoDOT to identify unfunded needs. Communicate unfunded needs to elected officials and the public. Communicate funding shortfalls to elected officials and the public. Educate the public on the transportation planning process. And so, again, we're kind of coming back to some of those education items. Ensure the system stays in good condition. Utilize the MoDOT asset management plan to ensure adequate investment. Prioritize investments that maintain and prolong the useful life of the existing system. Identify trail maintenance needs and continue to monitor ADA investment in the OTO communities. And then the last one under this goal is to monitor and report transportation system performance to inform decision making. So reviewing our performance measures and targets to best direct investment decisions. Since we first introduced performance measures at the OTO level, we have a lot more information now that we can measure and identify and categorize and big data and all those fun things. And so I think it's, we can really look at how we can be more targeted through those measures, and then make investment decisions that support the performance targets and continue to publish our annual State of Transportation report. So are there any comments relating to these items under preserving the existing system?
Natasha, under the ensure existing system stays in good condition, we have 4 bullets that talk about roads and trails and sidewalks. Do you need something specific for transit here?
We probably do. Let's see. Though, yeah, because that ties just direct to MoDOT asset management plan.
Hey, Natasha,
Yeah,
if you needed something transit specific in that area, we could do something along the line of the existing TAM plan. Just that would
okay.
be something that's already established that we could probably just add to the list.
Yeah, here maybe we just utilize the MoDOT asset management plan. There we go. Any other comments on these? Okay, thank you for that input, Frank. So then we have connected, integrated, multimodal system. So here we have continued to implement actions outlined in the OTO Transit Coordination Plan, including updating the plan, which Andy's actually kicked off here recently, and monitoring implementation of the plan, and then implementing a local 5310 administration program to ensure timely delivery of transit capital. So we currently rely on MoDOT to take the vehicles we select for award and go through that whole purchasing and administration and along with all the other vehicles they do statewide. And so looking at a way to maybe streamline that more locally for our awardees. And so then support transit programs that expand reverse commute possibilities and improve access to job centers. So identifying large employers and assessing the needs for transit service and identifying transit service options for employment needs. Promote transportation demand management through van pooling and employer-sponsored transportation services. So kind of maybe a more smaller scale than fixed route transit for employment. Identify large employers and provide information on transportation tax incentives and connect van pool providers with employers. Develop a strategic plan to create desired transit service. Survey the community to ascertain preference for coverage or frequency. Continue to investigate integrated service between City Utilities Transit, Missouri State University, and OATS. Work with the City of Springfield and City Utilities Transit to develop a high-frequency transit corridor. Explore alternatives to fixed route bus transit, such as light rail, streetcar, trolley, microtransit. Assess mobility as a service to supplement transit and other modes. Explore options for regional transit service and conduct additional research on Destination 2045 survey response regarding passenger rail and desire for intercity versus intercity transportation. I know one thing that we kind of found as we dug through the survey a little bit more, people use passenger rail very interchangeably with, kind of things that might be inside Springfield versus Amtrak to St. Louis, for example. So really just kind of understanding that, since it did come up so much during our survey. So then address connectivity gaps with all modes, identify connectivity gaps and provide a map for easy reference, develop projects that address connectivity gaps, identify sidewalk network gaps that support local connections to essential services and transit stops. Move toward a complete street network. Ensure complete street design is incorporated into transportation improvement projects. Promote neighborhood level connections and discourage gated communities that limit transportation connections. Implement towards a regional trail system. So this is our trail implementation plan. Monitor implementation through a dashboard. Continue to make investments in the regional trail system as outlined in the adoptive plan. Develop projects that advance trail construction readiness, and monitor funding available for investment in the regional trail system. Continue to provide support for Let's Go Smart. Use the Let's Go Smart website to communicate transportation options and participate in the Let's Go Smart Transportation Collaborative. Use the Major Thoroughfare Plan to promote multimodal improvements. Using street typologies, develop an overlay plan that maximizes complete street investments. Encourage construction of sidewalks on most roadways. Implement access management to preserve roadway capacity and improve safety.
Hey, Natasha,
Yeah,
sorry, does Let's Go Smart always need to say Let's Go Smart Transportation Collaborative? The
I think-
website and the Facebook page are all, I believe, just Let's Go Smart, but in the heading, should that say Let's Go Smart Transportation Collaborative?
no, so I think Let's Go Smart itself is kind of, like the tagline, the promotion. The Transportation Collaborative is speaking specifically to the group that is part of the community partnership of the Ozarks. And so
Gotcha.
brief history for everyone. There was a Let's Go Smart advocacy committee through Ozark Greenways, and then out of the Poverty Initiative in Springfield, the Transportation Collaborative was kind of reestablished through community partnership with the Ozarks. And then at some point, those two groups combined. And so that's just kind of the title for that group through CPO.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so then continue to implement actions and improvements outlined in the Regional Intelligent Transportation System Architecture. Support the efforts of the TMC, support implementation of MoDOT's TISMO program and action plan, maintain a list of investments needed to complete the ITS network, continue to invest in fiber connections to improve signal timing throughout the region. Continue to monitor congestion and travel time reliability on the freeway system to ensure trips are not diverted to other roads. Use travel time and other congestion measures to ensure reliability and prioritize projects that improve congestion on the freeway system. Support statewide freight planning efforts. Identify and find solutions to freight bottlenecks. Serve on freight committees when available, and continue to use the MoDOT statewide freight plan to prioritize projects. So this goal has a lot more action items underneath it. If there's anything in particular anyone wants to discuss or something you think we've missed or overstated.
Hey, Natasha,
Mhm.
I guess on the congestion on freeways and ensuring travel time reliability,
Yeah,
I think that we may want to have some mention of expressways and arterials
okay.
through there as well, knowing that our CMP addresses that.
It's a good point.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think of a way to say like lower functioning or lower classified roads. But maybe other roads works.
Yeah, or minor roads or local.
Okay. Any other comments on this section? All right. So then we have build a transportation system that supports a resilient region that is prepared for the future. And so maintain air quality attainment. Continue to participate in the Ozarks Clean Air Alliance to monitor air quality levels and identify ways to maintain ozone attainment. We didn't really necessarily want to say improve air quality because we're actually the lowest we've ever been at the moment. The standard is 70 and we're below 60. So anyway, I think it's just, yeah, if we just can continue to stay below that standard, that would be great. Review ways to develop resiliency to external factors such as population and employment growth, weather events, and unexpected impacts like COVID-19. So continue to use EnviroSmart, OTO's environmental database, to inform local project sponsors of environmental considerations in transportation projects. That is the branding that Dave has given to a project we have that incorporates our environmental justice, hazards such as like sinkholes and flooding, and then additional information there. Identify transportation facilities that are susceptible to flooding. Support a connected grid network that allows for ease of alternate travel routing. Promote investment decisions that direct growth near appropriate transportation facilities. Prioritize projects that encourage job creation, retention, and wage growth. And continue education of elected officials on the positive effects of local control of federal sub-allocated funding. So then we have plan for electric vehicles, automated vehicles, Hyperloop, drone delivery, and connected vehicles. Develop an electric vehicle charging infrastructure plan. Monitor status of alternative fuel corridors. That is a federal program that basically as different types of alternative fuels are within or near the corridor, then it gets a designation. And I think there's some additional programs that can go along with that in the future. Work with the Transportation Management Center to identify and implement technology to accommodate connected and automated vehicles, identify improvements supportive of automated vehicles, create a connected vehicle infrastructure plan that identifies infrastructure needs, and monitor transportation technology advancements. So, you know, we name some of these things, you know, Hyperloop or drone delivery, and who knows what other technologies will come out in the future. So connect to implement or continue to implement the congestion management system. Identify projects to improve signal timing, traffic bottlenecks, and capacity expansion needs. Continue to make freeway and expressway investments that connect communities and maintain low commute times, and support expansion of quality real-time traveler information. So are there any thoughts here on this list?
I had a thought as, you know, the SGF Yields program came through our call. Maybe we should do something about we're using that as a model for regional expansion on pedestrian safety.
Okay.
You know, they just have some really cool things like the signs and, you know, the people and all of that. So.
Okay, so maybe up higher.
Yeah, I was thinking under create a safety campaign on page, well, I guess it's numbered 86, the second page.
Okay. So maybe just
I was thinking under create a safety campaign, which was
on
page 86.
Okay, sorry, my page numbering's changed since.
Oh, yes,
then.
I'm sorry. Second page. So the next.
Okay.
I,
there. Okay. Yeah.
It has changed.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Anything else under resiliency or the other categories that maybe things have come to mind as we've gone through? Okay, and then the last goal, build quality projects that implement best design and engineering practices. Develop attractive projects that add to quality of life in OTO communities. So provide better project descriptions that include context-sensitive solutions in the STIP prioritization process. Develop standards to improve aesthetics of transportation projects. Assist member communities with improving gateways to their cities and the region, and continue to participate in MoDOT scoping and core team meetings. Explore best practices for complete street projects that are fiscally reasonable. Use street typologies to better scope complete projects. Sponsor training opportunities for members and partner trade organizations on complete street best practices and emerging trends. And then support recommendations in area comprehensive plans. Research and catalog recommendations in area plans for a more uniform regional approach, and be a resource to members for implementation at the community level. So those are all of the strategies and action items that we have proposed based on all of the different discussions we've had over this last year, putting our plan together. Is there anything we've missed when we read through them over and over and over again? Sometimes we don't realize either that something's stated the way it is or organized the way it is. Any thoughts at all? All thumbs up? Ah, Jeremy gave me a thumbs up. Thanks, Jeremy. And Alex. All right. Oh, Jeremy even celebrating. All right. Now we're having fun.
Okay. Maybe I'll just add in if
Yeah.
there's something, I mean, so I've had a role in a lot of these recommendations. And so if there's something where we haven't gone far enough, or maybe we went too far, I want everyone to feel really free to discuss that. And now's the time to do it. You definitely won't offend us in any discussions either way. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew, you know, feel comfortable. Natasha's worked really hard on this plan and she's done a great job, but you know, nothing is written in stone at this point.
So Natasha, Sarah, I have a question. With the Invest Act looking like it's going to include more infrastructure than just what we would call transportation, but it will include other types of infrastructure. Will there be if it is passed the way it sits now, will there be scope creep, so to speak, on your area of influence that you oversee with federal funding? Will it change anything here?
Matt, I don't know the details enough to know if the funding in that is coming, you know, to the DOT, to us, to you, what that looks like. I mean, I just hope we can have a community conversation. If there's a, you know, a bunch of additional funding in one area, 5307 per se, you know, honestly, the first discussion we want to have is, can we find a way to do increased frequency on national? I mean, you know, I think that's a community priority and that's something we'd want to talk about, but.
Sure, but I'm thinking in terms of infrastructure in other areas such as broadband,
Yeah.
electric, gas, water, all the things that we already do here at the utility. I mean, is there going to be scope creep on some of your responsibilities into those areas as well?
I think we'll know when we see it, just like you.
I just think
In theory though, Matt, like our focus is surface transportation. We're authorized through the surface transportation bill.
Okay.
So unless, you know, unless what they pass ends up affecting, you know, the way that the code and regulations and guidance are written for MPOs in our planning process.
Okay.
But you never know.
Okay, thank you.
But Matt, if you need us to do, you know, do something and look, you know, by all means, let's talk about it.
Absolutely. I just we got a call out of the blue yesterday. It involved some broadband in grants and stuff, and I'm as this popped up and you were talking about your grants person, I was like, there may be some possibilities there, but we'll talk offline.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, and so we did have a few messages in the chat. John Montgomery also gave a thumbs up, and then Tom Dancy said he had to leave, but it looks good. Great job. Thank you. So, and just, you know, if you did read through the rest of the plan that we sent out, you know, we'll kind of finalize this based on some of the discussion that we had today, but our goal is to put this into a 5-year implementation guide where it kind of directs the activities of OTO's planning work program. And so there are some ongoing things that would just, you know, maybe that first year we would have to ramp it up, but then it would become an ongoing thing. So all those education items that we mentioned all together, addressing our prioritization process and making sure that we're supporting those goals. Working on partnerships and seeking revenue, and then all of that monitoring and implementation, looking at how we kind of put everything into action, being involved in the community and on different committees, and then there's some project level type work as well. And then putting that into basically a year 1, a year 2, year 3. And then year 4 and 5 are a little smaller because we'll be working on that next update. But the thought is that kind of what we do each year would feed into or support what we do in the following years. So in that regard, if everyone feels comfortable with what we've got proposed there, I will just kind of briefly go over the layout of the plan. I'm not going to read all 100 and some pages to you. So we're working currently on updating, you know, kind of all the tables and figures. That's why my page numbers shifted. This is just the Word document right here that we're working out of. So we've got almost kind of like a book type organization. I'll just go back to the beginning here. So, you know, these are the themes we've been talking about the entire planning process. Where are we? Where are we going? Are we there yet? So looking at all of those existing conditions, and then looking at our recommendations that we just reviewed in the investment plan, which is, you know, where we have our fiscally constrained project lists. And then the implementation plan is our major thoroughfare plan, all of our trail planning work, and then that implementation plan that outlines the next 5 years. So we just have an introduction that goes over everything. The planning factors, these are in federal transportation law. And so Matt, that's kind of what I was referring to. You know, these are the things that we've been asked to focus on. And then we have our performance-based planning and all of the required measures, and we go over those in more detail in the system performance chapter. So let's see. Our existing conditions, we pulled in a lot of information that is also in our growth trends report. A lot of these are charts and maps that we showed during our visioning process, just kind of like updated for 2019 since that information is available now. Let's see, sorry, that was something I was playing with. So again, more of our growth trends report information. This is change in housing and center transit. This is something we've been tracking with our OTO level performance measures. You know, Dave's great heat maps. So then looking at employment, current employment per square mile, they're really, if you just looked at it between 2018 and 2045, kind of the breakout didn't look that different. So we wanted to highlight where we thought that employment would be added. And so you can see that with our industrial parks, our medical areas, and then all the, you know, things that we're going to start seeing with that corridor. So really just kind of talking about how people commute, where they work versus where they live, and how our commute times changed over the years. So, you know, our goal has been to still keep this under 25 minutes. And, you know, we are starting to see some creep in that, especially out of Christian counties, Nixon, Ozark. But we have some transportation improvements going in that, you know, maybe we'll kind of see that change over the next few years. So then I go over a lot of the things that tie into our prioritization process. So these maps relate to kind of that scoring. Also, you'll see these again when we go through our STIP prioritization in August. But looking at like the high volume corridors, our fatal crash locations, how that ties in with our targets, injury crash locations. We talk about Show Me Zero, MoDOT Strategic Highway Safety Plan here. Under congestion, we talk a lot about travel delay and kind of AM versus PM and where, you know, things are most congested during those times of day. Here's just a sample of what happened during the stay-at-home orders with traffic. You can really see that dip, and we're not quite back. We're getting, you know, close to back where we were before COVID really hit. And, maybe identifying some ways that we can try to capture that going forward. Looking at our volume to capacity, this is current, and then what's projected in our model. Aviation and goods movement. So we talk a lot. In January, we had Christy speak along with Matt and Cole regarding what's going on in their worlds, and so we've incorporated that information and discussion here as well. I know the airport's got a lot going on with cargo. That's actually, I think, you're seeing some of your best numbers yet, it sounds like, Christy. So then goods movement, we have commercial traffic, our freight network, we use that in our scoring process. Looking at the focus of the Missouri Statewide Freight and Rail Plan, it's not yet been finalized, but these are the focus areas in that. And then looking at our bridge and roadway condition, what we've put into our performance measures over the years, summarizing the results of the 2019 update to the congestion management plan, the primary focus areas of MoDOT's TISMO plan, and then highlighting those strategies for implementation in the traffic incident management plan, and then talking about the base scenarios out of our model. So our 2018 kind of existing condition based on the model, the way the model processes that information, and then looking at 2045 existing plus committed. And then they are currently working on the 2045 with the constrained project list. So we'll have that at the end of the plan once we get those results. Transit, so city utilities, kind of looking at their ridership also. There's been some declines. A lot of that can be tied into the fact that they did do a rerouting of different things after the transit center opened, and that always has an impact. And then also demand response, paratransit's going up, but that's following some industry trends there. And then we talk about the impact of COVID and what we kind of are waiting to see come out of Florida SGF. So then Missouri State University, Cole had talked earlier this year about future plans to maybe rebrand the Bear Line, do some major rerouting, the impacts of the downtown improvements on parking and what that'll do for the shuttle system. And then OATS, this is something that probably maybe we haven't talked about as much, but if you ever visit OATS website or if you're from one of the surrounding areas, they really are starting to provide a lot of more general purpose transportation. It's not necessarily daily or hourly or anything like that, but if people need to come into Springfield for shopping, they have an opportunity to do that through OATS, and not just for medical or elderly or disabled trips. So, and then we talk about our human service providers. And then intercity transportation, we talk a little bit more about how OATS is providing that service as well, and then Greyhound and Jefferson Lines, which gets around the state and to other states. We do provide highlights from the fixed route peer analysis that Andy conducted close to 2 years ago, comparing CU to other peer agencies. And, I think it really shows how well CU does with coverage and efficiencies for the size of our system. And, so just kind of we're in line or doing better on some things, and what does that do to inform going forward? And then we go ahead and copy over what came out of the 2012 route study. So it's what we have at the moment. I know there's still been a lot of discussion about this limited stop circulator and what that looks like going forward, and that's part of that strategic plan that we can look at. And then the actions out of the transit coordination plan that was last adopted in 2017, and Andy is working on updating that now. So then on active transportation, we talk about towards regional trail system, our 45 by 45, and kind of goals, and to really look at how we approach funding for those. I was going to add to that. It's not just the community grants, but then, you know, you can see our miles of trails just for transportation have been tracking upwards, and, you know, we're just continuing to add to that trail system. And then talking about our bicycle and pedestrian priorities. And so this is part of that discussion that Andy's had with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and looking at, you know, what are kind of our policies for priorities. I'm really getting those complete streets, sidewalks on both sides of the streets, and or side paths. Looking at, you know, how do we get that trail network connected throughout the region, and then funding that. On top of that, looking at our complete streets toolbox and design standards, and how we can, you know, integrate that into our project process. And then we just highlight some of the things that OTO is continually working on. So then system performance, this looks at those national performance measures, and we are required to compare how they appeared in the prior plan. So we walk through that process. Those are all, you know, kind of what you've seen when we've brought them to the TPC and the board to approve those targets. So that is that section. And then we talk about the OTO defined performance measures. It is a recommendation of this plan that these are revisited, both the measures and the targets. We've kind of had set targets always by 2035, but it's kind of hard to really track progress, you know, or are we going to meet those? So I think maybe we can kind of follow that national model of setting some more interim targets as well. Let's see. So then we have our environmental and cultural considerations. So this goes through both natural and environmental justice. We identify, you know, the types of endangered species that might be encountered in a project. We talk about air quality, both ozone and PM 2.5. You can see here how we are staying well below standard on both of those. A little bit of discussion on water quality, resiliency, talking about flooding, and then mitigation, looking at natural hazard mitigation, so pulling recommendations from the Christian and Greene County plans that might relate to infrastructure and transportation. MoDOT also has a mitigation plan for environmental things that we've copied over here, and looking at some of our policies that can mitigate negative environmental impacts. So then we get into just listing out our historic register listings for the region as well, and then environmental justice. And so I've overlaid the constrained project kind of line work on top of our different environmental justice areas. We have the minorities and the low income. We use the hex bins that Dave developed for the prioritization process, and that is based on the OTO region. And then these other ones are just clipped out of the mapping for Christian and Greene counties. And so we also show our LEP population. Spanish is our primary limited English proficient population, so we highlight that. We have our population below poverty, our zero car households. So just to note, you know, with those and the disabled population, we do have those, you know, concentrations in areas that are outside of, you know, our typical transit service area. And so looking at always being able to provide additional transportation options is important. And then youth and elderly kind of don't co-locate. So it's kind of interesting just how the youth are all kind of on one side of the county and the elderly are on the other, or the region. But just how that's something to keep in mind as well. This is all the survey results that we've gone over in prior meetings. This is that same document pretty much incorporated here. So I'll skip over all of that. Goal development, this just talks about the 5 goals. And then the goals that were in Transportation Plan 2040, and then how, we kind of also pulled from those area community comprehensive plan recommendations. And so that's just that summary of those. So then part 2, where are we going? These are all the recommendations we just talked about. So I will skip over that. Our investment plan outlines revenue sources. It's similar to what you see in this TIP every year. Our federal, our state, our local transit funding, all of that. And apparently we might have a fire alarm going off. I hope it's not an actual fire. So then our programmed projects talk about how we pull in from the TIP. Our revenue estimates. So these are what we talked about going into our prioritization process. But we show the TIP in those first 4 years. That also includes projected funding from the statewide fuel tax increase. And then we kind of have our 10 years alternating, and then our 2 time bands. Similar with transit. And then we talk about, how we used our scoring and developed our constrained project lists. So to make the document a little bit more feasible and not having some, giant wide spreadsheet in the middle of the document, we went ahead and did the constraint in a separate table and then outlined all the projects. So initially you'll see, the cost for the TIP, and then the annual programs that were always on the top of that constrained project list during prioritization, just spelled out for each year, and then for the 2 time bands. So then we kind of get through all of that. We have, all the projects listed that we prioritized. We have a little bit of funding left at the end of the day. And so if there's anything that comes up, we should be able to hopefully accommodate that. Very similar with transit. We show the constraint first, and then the list of projects. And so including that operating expenses. So then we have the unconstrained project list, and that's everything that was submitted that we weren't able to constrain. And so then that totals, now these are uninflated costs. That totals $650 million in today's dollars. So that's a pretty significant list. And then for transit, it's nearly $700 million, including the need for additional buses, a potential trolley service for downtown, that electric infrastructure, and then the route study. So the model results, as soon as we get those back, we will plug those in. And then I will pull up the maps real quick here in a second. And then we have our implementation plan, the major thoroughfare plan, what we are doing right now. Still kind of waiting to see how street typologies shake out with Forward SGF and how we can apply those regionally. And with the last planning process, we did nearly, I think, over 300 updates to the major thoroughfare plan. And we've amended it 6 times since then. So what we are proposing is just that we have a few changes that Republic had already requested, and we were in the process of incorporating those into Transportation Plan 2040, and figure we should just incorporate those here since this is being adopted. And going ahead and fixing those alignment changes with the MM, you know, kind of realignment across US 60 and those changes there. And then Battlefield had requested to add, I think it's on our unconstrained list, but the extension of 4th Street and Battlefield. And so since that wasn't on the major thoroughfare plan, including that there. And then I think Springfield had 2 changes that they had also just requested. And so we'll probably incorporate those. I think it relates Don or Kirk. It's kind of over by Menards, I believe, those changes. So we're just going to clean some things up. But then I think as we go to implement street typologies, we can have a much broader discussion about what that looks like region-wide. And so then we reference some of the discussion that we had earlier this year with the street typologies and how we should address flexibility and how we should handle our design standards. So not a lot of changes there. We're just going to kind of go with the status quo for now, and then revisit that here later. So then we have that updated map on our bicycle pedestrian trail facilities. Kind of the same thing. We're going to move forward with, you know, kind of the bike route map and whatnot that we've had before. You know, where we have like recommended, you know, sidewalk gaps be filled, but this is the important statement here. It is OTO's goal that through the implementation of complete streets, OTO's design standards, and the trail implementation plan towards a regional trail system, construction of future facilities will rely less on a map and more on the needs of the system and users. Bicycle and pedestrian needs should be considered along all corridors and with every project. And it may be, you know, like an interstate project that we find, you know, obviously we're not going to put sidewalks along the interstate, but I think it's also important to note that there are opportunities maybe for trail development over or under, that the interchanges may still need to have accommodation. So I think it's appropriate to still say along all corridors. And then the OTO should continue to focus on connecting communities with trail and completing trail gaps so they can support transportation related usage. So I think that is, you know, kind of the big takeaway on the bicycle and pedestrian implementation. And then so we'll have our, I'll pull those maps up here in a second too. And then a trail map that will show kind of all the proposed trail that was included with the regional bicycle and pedestrian trail investment study, RBIPTIS. And then our 5-year implementation guide will kind of update this a little bit based on those few tweaks we made to the strategies earlier. And then we'll have all of the appendices that we reference throughout the plan. So that is the plan in a nutshell. Are there any comments on any of that? I will go ahead and pull up the maps. They were in the PDF that we emailed out. Let's see. Any comments while I pull up the maps or anything? I know it's a lot. So I encourage you to go ahead and read through this as soon as we get everything finalized with, you know, getting all the figures labeled and the table of contents numbers and the appendix, all those items added to the end. We will be sending this out for public comment and for review by our federal partners. So I encourage you in the meantime to go ahead and you know, read through this, and if you find anything, like Sarah said, where either we've gone too far or haven't gone far enough, please just let us know. Now I'm going to share. All the maps. Okay, so the bicycle and pedestrian facilities, like I said, it's pulled over from last time. We did update the trail alignments for existing trail, but we do not show proposed trail on these maps as we have that separate map for that. Let's see. Here are the changes for the major thoroughfare plan. And you can kind of see the changes in Republic. Most of them are tied to that MM realignment, and then kind of that battlefield addition there. So then kind of just that resulting major thoroughfare plan map. So here is our constrained project list. The project numbers correspond to the numbers that are in the table in the plan. And there are a few projects that are unmapped. And then we have our unconstrained list, which you can kind of just see all these projects that we just weren't quite able to move up to that constrained list. And then the trail alignments. These are based on kind of what's come out of RBIPTIS and what's been outlined towards a regional trail system. So there are a few on-street connections. There's the projects that are funded and underway, and we'll kind of see those implemented shortly. The existing trails, and then all those additional proposed alignments for connectivity. So that said, is there anything that anyone wants to revisit in regards to those maps in more detail or in the plan itself? Okay, well, again, I encourage you to read through it. Let us know if you find anything. But at the same time, I would really appreciate maybe some sort of motion or something along those lines for recommending this to the technical planning committee, knowing that we're still finalizing all of the formal portions of the draft. And Sarah, I don't know if you have anything you want to add. I know we got distracted by a fire alarm.
No, just do we have, if they're not ready to recommend, do we have the opportunity for another meeting?
We do. We have a meeting on the calendar for the 12th. And that should be on everyone's calendar. So that is available. But basically at that moment, we would be finalizing everything and going straight out for public comment. Yeah, so I guess either way, yeah, if you guys are ready to at least kind of recommend it in concept and or request another meeting to discuss anything in further details, I'm open either way.
Might be good to just have an extra couple of weeks for everyone, for all of us to process it. And in the case that there's something else that we've all kind of overlooked today. And then if we can just kind of plan on August, knowing that August 12th is our drop dead date, for lack of a better term. Unless you all think there's something more pressing and we need to get it approved before then. That's just kind of what I'm thinking in general.
Hey, John, I agree with that. If we could just, if that's all right, if you're comfortable with that schedule, I'd like to take a little time. I think I've got questions, but I want to make sure that I've read it thoroughly and I don't say something that is obvious right there in the document. So I agree with you. I think a couple of weeks to kind of digest this would be awesome.
Okay, well, we can definitely do that. And we'll make sure that everyone gets a copy that has all the appendices and everything too, so you can kind of see all the references that we're making throughout the document. And I just want to say I really appreciate everyone's participation during the meetings. And I know it's been so strange with COVID and doing this all online. I think, you know, we kind of had to find a way to continue some of the conversations through those challenges. But I really do appreciate everyone coming online and helping us get through this process. Okay, Dave, did we have any comments or questions come from Facebook today?
No comment. One like.
All right, we'll take it. All right, well, if there's nothing else, we will see everybody on the 12th.
Thank you, Natasha.
All right,
This
thanks.
is good stuff. I know it's a lot of work. This is really good stuff. And the lack of questions doesn't mean we're not interested. We're just overwhelmed.
Tasha,
We'll be ready for this.
Yes, Kurt,
no, just thank you. Good job.
thanks. All right, well, thank you, everyone.